I still remember that moment, as if it just happened. I was standing by the coffee machine in the office, adding some almond milk to my morning coffee, when Victor, the new CEO and the son of the company's founder, walked into the break room. He didn't greet me, didn't smile, just looked at me as if I were part of the furniture in the room. Then he casually said, "Mia, I need you in my office right now." That wasn't a request. I had worked for the company for almost 12 years. During that time, I built the customer service department from scratch, negotiated over 120 contracts, and trained most of the team working outside his office. But none of that mattered to Victor. His father, Richard, built this company with resilience and loyalty. Victor just inherited the position and seemed to think that gave him the right to act like a king. I followed him, trying to shake off the growing tension in my chest. He didn't even sit down. "You're fired," he said, his tone flat and emotionless. "We don't need people like you slowing down this company." I blinked. At first I thought this was some sick joke. "Excuse me?" I repeated. "You heard me," he replied, flipping through a stack of papers as if picking lunch. "You can pack up and leave immediately." I stared at him, stunned. My heart pounded, ready to burst. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to ask why. But instead I smiled, a gentle, calm, deliberate smile. "Understood," I said. "Have a good day, Victor." I walked out of his office, head held high, but inside I was trembling. My colleagues looked at me as I walked by, sensing something was wrong. A few stood up, about to ask what happened, but I gently shook my head. "Don't make things harder." I walked out of his office, head held high, but inside I was trembling. My colleagues looked at me as I walked by, sensing something was wrong. A few stood up, about to ask what happened, but I gently shook my head. "Don't make things harder." I packed up in silence. As I drove home, memories flooded back like waves. 12 years I gave to this company, more than I gave to my own family. Late nights, working through holidays, taking calls while trying to hold back tears after my divorce. I gave them everything, and now I was discarded as if I meant nothing. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just curious. Why? That question haunted me all night. I barely slept. The timing was strange too. We were about to finalize one of the company's biggest deals, a deal I'd been preparing for 6 months. I knew this client inside and out. I was the one who scheduled the final review for this Friday. And now I was fired. Had he even read the contract? The next morning, just after 9 a.m., my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. I let it ring, unsure if I could take any more shock. But curiosity won again. "Mia, it's Mr. Richard." That voice sent a chill down my spine. The real CEO, the one who hired me 11 years ago after just one interview. "I just walked into the office," he said, and I could hear the tension in his voice. His voice was tense. I could feel the worry in every word. In his throat, I wondered why the hell he was packing up and leaving, what had happened. I hesitated. His son had fired me. Silence. Then he took a deep breath. "Yesterday, he called me lazy and said he didn't need me anymore." There was a long silence before he spoke again, this time slowly, as if trying to keep calm. "Mia, did he read your contract?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "He was supposed to close the Horizon Edge deal today, wasn't he?" "Yes, we had the meeting scheduled for 11 a.m. Oh my God. I heard the rustling of paper behind him, followed by a loud noise as if he had slammed something onto the table. "Mia, your contract has a clause," he said. "A clause I insisted on after the last acquisition disaster. You're not just the account manager, you're the only one authorized to negotiate the Horizon Edge deal. I froze. He can't close the deal without you. Mr. Richard continued. It's illegal, unethical, and frankly, impractical. The deal will collapse without you. A slow realization began to rise in my chest. He hadn't read the contract. Victor had no idea what he'd done, and that's when something inside me shifted. The betrayal was still there, yes, but now I felt something completely different. Control. He had rushed to pull the trigger too quickly, and now the gun was pointing back at him. Mr. Richard hung up without saying another word. I could feel his anger through the silence that followed. I sat still in my apartment, a cold cup of coffee beside me, staring into the void. He didn't know that his son had fired me without reading the contract. I leaned back on the sofa and let out a bitter laugh. After 11 years, it had finally come to this. A spoiled, impulsive man trying to play CEO, making decisions like they were moves in a video game. But real companies don't respond well to poor decisions. And this company was about to face the consequences in the hardest way possible. I wasn't sure what would happen next. Part of me wanted to change and head to the office just to witness the collapse. But the other part, the one that had endured years of unrecognized overtime and swallowed my pride countless times, just wanted to let them self-destruct. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:13 a.m., I received another call. This time, it was Victor. I sent it to voicemail. A minute later, another call came through. This time from the receptionist, then from legal, then from accounting. I watched the phone ring endlessly, lighting up like a Christmas tree. I didn't answer a single call. The voicemail icon kept flashing. I tapped on it. Mia, hey, it's Victor. His voice was tight. Listen, there was a misunderstanding yesterday. I may have acted too quickly. We need you back today. It's urgent. Please call me back. Urgent. The word urgent rolled in my head like a marble in a glass cup. He didn't apologize, not once, not even the company's fake apology. Instead, it was panic disguised as politeness. I took a sip of my cold coffee, still not moving from the sofa. At 10:35, my phone rang again. This time, it was an unfamiliar number. Stella, an old colleague. We had been close back then. She had worked in my department before moving to marketing. I picked up the phone. Mia, you won't believe what's happening here, she said, her voice barely audible. Try me. Victor had just been scolded thoroughly by his father, right in front of everyone. The meeting room was full. Mr. Richard walked in and slammed the Horizon Edge contract on the table. I raised an eyebrow. He brought the contract? Yes, and he asked one question. Did you read this before firing Mia? Victor tried to pretend, saying something about reassessing roles and shifting direction, but Mr. Richard didn't buy it. He immediately turned to the clause he always mentioned, the one stating that he was the only negotiator for the Horizon Edge deal. That clause existed for a reason. I knew. Everyone knew, except Jason. She paused for a moment. I heard murmurs in the office. Mia? He looked pale, like a ghost. He realized he was the reason Horizon Edge was about to fall through. I sighed. So what did Mr. Richard say? She replied, he said if this deal fails, his position here will become a matter for negotiation. I exhaled, realizing I had been holding my breath. That was the first crack in Victor's armor. I don't know what your plan is, Stella added, but whatever it is, you have the upper hand now. I ended the call with a soft, thank you, then stood up and looked out the window. The horizon was still calm. I always found comfort in that stillness. The city seemed oblivious to the chaos of people, just moving on. At 11:15, a new message came in. this time from Mr. Richard himself. Mia, I sincerely apologize for what happened. I misjudged the situation. Please come in, not just to discuss the deal, but so we can talk privately. That feeling was hard to resist, but I wasn't ready to go back as if nothing had happened. Not yet. Victor's mistake wasn't just a contract. It was about respect, trust, and the years I had invested. Those years couldn't be replaced by a hasty phone call or a seat at the negotiating table. Yet something stirred inside me. I wasn't petty, but I wasn't weak either. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. I picked up my phone and finally replied, not with a call, but a message. I will consider returning to finalize the Horizon Edge deal, but only under specific conditions. I pressed send, then changed and prepared myself. When I arrived at the office, it was past noon. I didn't use the staff entrance, but walked through the main lobby like a guest, a move I knew would attract attention. Everyone knew I had been fired the day before, so my return wasn't a quiet one, it was a statement. The receptionist stood up as soon as she saw me. "Miss Kelly, Mia," she stammered. "Mr. Richard is waiting for you. Please follow me." As I followed her down the hallway, I noticed the atmosphere had shifted. Everyone looked up from their desks. Conversations halted, the air filled with tense silence. Mr. Richard stood at the door of his office as I arrived. He didn't smile. "Mia," he said, nodding. "Thank you for coming." I nodded in return but didn't extend my hand. He stepped aside, letting me pass into the office. For a long moment, no one spoke as I sat across from his massive oak desk. He shut the door, leaned against it, and sighed deeply. "I made a mistake. A big one," he began. "I gave my son too much power too quickly. What he did to you was unprofessional, disrespectful, and frankly, it jeopardized a deal we've been working on for over 6 months." I nodded slowly. "That's right. I reviewed the contract this morning," he continued. "Every word is clear. You were granted full decision-making power with the Horizon Edge account." "I remember it very clearly," I said softly. "I'm the one managing the consequences," he said. His gaze met mine. "You didn't deserve what happened yesterday," he said, "and I'd like to invite you back, with full authority, to complete the deal." "I'll come back," I said, "but I want everything written out clearly." "And one more thing," I said, my voice firm. "This can never happen again." He nodded immediately. "And one more thing," I said, my tone firm. "This can't happen again. Not with me, not with anyone else." A moment of silence passed. Then he nodded slowly, thinking. "You have my commitment." With that, I stood up. As I walked out of his office, I saw Victor standing at the end of the hallway. By 1 p.m., the 18th floor conference room was ready. The Horizon Edge team had just arrived, and we had about 30 minutes before the official meeting. I went through the documents page by page, confirming every agreed negotiation point. Mr. Darwish, their CEO, was sharp, decisive, and extremely sensitive to any lack of transparency. A single hint of internal disarray could make him pull out. As I placed the Arabic printout of the final terms on the table, I saw Victor pacing outside the glass wall like a caged predator. Mr. Richard stepped out and intercepted him. Their voices started low, then rose like an oncoming storm. When Mr. Richard's hand went up, Victor froze. His face flushed crimson, and he shot me a look filled with rage and humiliation before storming off. That was the last I saw of him that day. At exactly 1:30, Mr. Darwish entered with his assistant. I greeted him in Arabic. He smiled. Rare for him. "You remembered," he said. "Respect takes us a long way." The meeting went smoothly. 2 hours later, we shook hands and signed the deal. After they left, Mr. Richard approached me. His face, for the first time, showed real relief. "You saved us," he said, "and I owe you more than just gratitude." "You owe this company a leader," I replied, "one who knows the difference between power and responsibility." He didn't argue. That evening, as I walked to the garage, the tension of the past 48 hours finally began to melt away. I left the office not as an employee, but as someone who understood her worth. But I also knew the battle wasn't over. Victor may have been silent today, but men like him don't disappear. They retreat, only to return with subtler strategies. The following week, the Horizon Edge deal hit the front page of our internal bulletin. A breakthrough in cross-cultural negotiation. My name wasn't mentioned, but everyone knew who closed that deal. My inbox was flooded with quiet praise from both juniors and seniors, some of whom had once dismissed me in meetings. I appreciated it, but I wasn't naive. I knew that when the wind changes, so do loyalties. Then the small things started happening. Travel reimbursements were delayed. Documents were returned unsigned with no explanation. A fake email, sent from my address, was flagged by IT. It contained incorrect client data and had been sent to a foreign partner. Thankfully, he trusted me and reached out to clarify, but the damage was done. I knew Victor was behind it. He no longer wanted to fire me. That had failed. Now he wanted me to unravel myself, to doubt, to withdraw, to quit from exhaustion. But I wasn't fresh out of school anymore. I documented everything. Every missed email, every error I didn't make. I knew evidence always outweighs emotion. Then I heard the confirmation of my suspicion. As I passed a meeting room, I heard Victor's voice, too loud for a private conversation. "She's unstable, aggressive, not fit to manage high-profile clients." I stopped, frozen. "I'm just saying," he continued, "maybe we should start thinking about succession planning for customer service. She's clearly overwhelmed." Another voice, maybe a new executive, replied, "But she handled the Horizon Edge deal under immense pressure." Victor scoffed. "It was just luck. We can't run a company on luck." I stood still for a few seconds, then walked away. Not out of fear, but out of chilling recognition of his calculated cruelty. That night I stayed late. The office was quiet, the lights dim. I wondered how many more battles I'd have to fight just to keep the job I had earned. "Still here?" Mr. Richards' voice broke the silence. "I could ask you the same." He handed me the revised contract, every term precise. I nodded. "I've initiated an internal audit," he said. "Too many things haven't been lining up lately." "Why didn't you stop Victor?" I asked. A long silence. "Because I needed to see how far he would go," he finally said, heavy with weariness. "You're protecting the company," I said. "Or trying to save you both. Maybe it's already too late for one of us," he said. I looked at him and whispered, "I don't need protection. I need you to decide what legacy you want to leave behind." His eyes stopped on mine before he turned and walked out. I knew something big was coming. The office felt colder that week, not because of the weather, but because the atmosphere between everyone had changed. Conversations quieted down as I walked past the hallway on the 9th floor of Phoenix Tech headquarters. Some colleagues offered tentative smiles, others avoided eye contact. The internal investigation had officially begun, and tension pulsed through the building. I wasn't the one who called for the investigation, but deep down, it felt like someone had finally turned on the light in a room kept dark for far too long. I wanted the truth to surface, not just for myself, but for everyone who had been kept in the shadows since Victor took over. Still, I knew how power games worked in large corporations. Truth didn't always bring justice. Sometimes it only led to silent exits and a few months' severance. That Thursday afternoon, I was called into a secondary meeting room, a former storage space temporarily converted by the investigation team. Diagrams lined the walls. Whiteboards were filled with notes and data from security logs. Daniel, the head of the internal inquiry, nodded in greeting. "Hi, Mia. Thanks for coming. We need to clarify a few things concerning your account." I sat down, focusing on steadying my breath. He opened a file on his laptop. "This email was sent from your account, from a shared machine near the pantry. Credentials were manually entered." I frowned. "Someone copied my login credentials?" Daniel nodded slightly. "We believe so, not external, internal." I leaned back, the room seeming to shrink. "I reported it the moment I noticed something wrong." Daniel nodded. "And we appreciate that. There are at least 3 similar cases, all linked to your name." My heart pounded. "Someone's trying to sabotage me." He paused. "We think so too. There's a clear pattern." He glanced at the board. "And most of the anomalous access points lead back to Victor's personal assistant." I clenched my hands. "So now what?" Daniel exhaled. "Mr. Richard wants the findings presented directly. He wants the full truth." I nodded. "I'll be there." Daniel looked at me a beat longer. "You don't have to." "I will be." I didn't want to hide. I needed to see this through. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed faces of colleagues who had quietly left over the past year, faces once full of promise. I now understood. They may have been victims, like me. The next morning, I arrived early to the main boardroom. Mr. Landon was already there, gazing pensively out the window. Daniel and 2 others followed. Marcus arrived late, phone in hand, aloof, until he saw me. He froze. "She's not on the committee," Victor said. "I asked her to be here," Mr. Richard replied without turning. "This should have been handled internally," Victor scowled. I replied, "Then maybe you shouldn't have fabricated emails using company accounts." Daniel laid out the evidence, from login logs to file edits. As Marcus's composure faded, I said flatly, "You didn't fire me. You sabotaged me and nearly cost us a $100 million deal." Victor's face started to change, his smug expression cracking. "You're making this up. She's just bitter because she got fired." I looked him in the eye. "You didn't fire me, Victor. You sabotaged me and almost ruined the biggest deal the company had seen in 5 years." Mr. Richard finally turned, eyes heavy. "I gave you chances, more than one, and you betrayed that trust." "It's not what you think," Victor started but was cut off. "Worse," Mr. Richard said. "You are suspended immediately." Victor said nothing. He left, his final glance not defiant, but realizing that this time there was no way out. He looked at me one last time, this time not with anger, but disbelief, as if he finally realized that none of his tactics could save him now. He walked out in silence. I stayed. Mr. Richard sighed, shoulders low. "I failed to guide him," I answered softly, "but you can still guide the company." He looked at me, then nodded. And for the first time since everything had started, I felt the weight begin to lift. 2 weeks had passed since the audit meeting, but the impact of that morning still lingered in every corridor of the company's Singapore headquarters. The name Victor, once seated in power as if by destiny, was now just a shadow in whispered staff conversations. The board acted swiftly. The evidence was irrefutable. Forged emails, suspicious login trails, intentional manipulation of internal complaints, all traced back to Oliver, or those he had manipulated. When the termination notice was issued, there was no press release, no litigation, just a quiet, clean silence, as if history itself had deleted a systemic flaw. I thought I would feel triumphant, but the only thing I felt was stillness. Not victory, but equilibrium. As if I had passed through the storm and could finally breathe. A few days later, Mr. Richard, the CEO, called me into his office. The door shut behind us with a weight that suggested this conversation would be different. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," he said, his voice lower than usual, "and about what I want this company to stand for in the future." He slid an envelope across the desk. Inside was a letter of appointment for Strategic Customer Director, a role I had once believed only existed in the closed-door meetings between male executives. "I didn't ask for this," I said. I didn't accept immediately. Instead, I said, "I don't want to just hold a title. I want to help rebuild this culture so no one else has to go through what I did." He smiled for the first time in weeks. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." That night, I sat alone in the temporary office, watching city lights reflect on the glass. The nameplate on the door was still blank. I gently touched it, as if confirming I wasn't dreaming. For years, I had worked quietly, hoping others would recognize my contributions. Now I understood silence did not earn justice. In the weeks that followed, I began restructuring the department. I restored trust, implemented an anonymous feedback system, and personally mentored junior staff. When they asked how I stayed strong, I told the truth. You don't get to choose every battle, but you do get to choose how you stand in the middle of them. The last I heard of Victor, he was applying to small firms out of state. Some said Richard had shielded him from public disgrace, a final act of someone who once believed in redemption. One afternoon, I passed the conference room where the Phoenix tech deal had once unfolded. I paused, recalling the chaos, and the moment I smiled at Victor before walking out. That was the moment I reclaimed myself.